Man, 2021 is going to be a hell of a year for bikes. You've got the RS660, the MT09 SP, the Trident, and even the new Busa. What more could you want? Well, not wanting to leave the leather daddies out in the cold, there's a handful of new cruisers and some updates to old ones to make them feel just as fancy as those sport bike boys with their new shiny toys. You might think the cruiser market is just big air-cooled V-twins that do nothing more than turn gasoline into noise, but believe it or not, cruisers are starting to catch up to standard and sport bikes in terms of technology, build quality, and components. Sure, you can spend a mint on a heritage cruiser and get bottom dollar brakes and a suspension made out of mattress springs, but that's becoming more and more uncommon. Sure, some boomers might get their grandkids to comment on this video saying hashtag not my bagger, but updates and upgrades are always a good thing. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the best cruiser motorcycles you can buy in the year of our Lord Rossi 2021. Starting us off at number 10 is my current favorite Harley-Davidson. No, it's not the Fat Bob, even though I do love it a lot. It's actually the Low Rider S. Now, this bike is at the bottom of the list because it's expensive and unsophisticated. It'll run you 18 grand for the base model, and you never buy a base model Harley. Now, yes, the bike does have an ABS and security system included as standard, which is nice because normally that's a $1,400 option between them, but beyond that, it's really just a twist and go bike. There's no rider modes, no computers reading your inputs. You just need to go out and ride the motorcycle. Now, some people love that. I do like the fact that you can just hop on the bike and not have to put in some crazy sequence of button pushes to get it set up right every time you want to go for a ride. With all that being said, let's talk about some of the real good stuff on this motorcycle. This bike is classic club styling, and the more I see it done well, the more I like this style of motorcycle. It's a great looking bike, from the bronze rims to the 2-in-2 pipes and the little bubble fairing, but man, as good as it looks, it's a bit of a tough sell when it costs as much or more than some of the better bikes on this list. So moving on. Number 9 is the BMW R18, a cruiser that's approximately 40 feet long with an engine right out of 1918. Now, I'm just kidding, the bike is powered by an air-cooled 1802cc boxer engine that's putting down 91 horsepower and 116 foot-pounds of torque. BMW has positioned this motorcycle as an alternative to Harley-Davidson's and Indian's heritage offerings, meaning that it's a slow and heavy bike with a ton of customization options. BMW really tried to sell this customization aspect, showing bobbers, touring bikes, club bikes, and so on, but in my opinion, the thing that sets this cruiser apart from other big, heavy heritage models is the fact that BMW used a very old-feeling engine. Modern Harleys with the Milwaukee 8 don't feel like they should. They're a little too smooth and too refined, but the Boxer Twin feels like it came right out of a biplane from World War I. If you're looking for a bike that feels old and sounds old, but you want it to stop and handle like a modern bike, the R18 is one of the best bikes out there. Plus, there's no substitute for twisting the throttle at a stoplight and feeling the whole bike rock from side to side as the engine twists the whole motorcycle. Number 8, the Kawasaki Vulcan S. Okay, look, I hate this motorcycle. I'm sorry, I just do. I think it's ugly, I think the sound it makes is boring, and I think you can get a much better bike for your dollar, but as a starter cruiser, you could do a whole lot worse. The bike's main competition is the Rebel 500, and in just about every way, the Vulcan kicks the Rebel down the stairs and steals its lunch money. It's making 61 horsepower and 47 foot-pounds of torque, which is a teensy bit much for someone who's never been on a bike before, but it is manageable. It's got a 6-speed manual, which you don't get in Sportsters or Bolts, and it weighs 491 pounds wet, which means it's lighter than a lot of the bikes on this list. One of the features that Kawasaki really loves to promote is their ErgoFit system, which basically means you can combine different pegs, bars, and seats to fit tall, medium, and short riders on the same motorcycle, which is kind of neat, but it's kind of a lame flagship feature at the same time. Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of Vulcan boys sounding off in the comments below about how I just don't understand the Vulcan, and you really should go buy one because they're solid and dependable bikes. But you don't have to settle, man. There are better bikes on this list. One thing you definitely don't need to settle for is a dumb and clunky claw phone mount for your handlebars. I used to use one of those things until I discovered a more elegant solution, Rockform. They make one of the toughest phone cases out there, tested from a drop height of 6 feet, and it's got a phone-safe magnet in the back, which comes in handy more times than you might think. Better still, it secures to their handlebar phone mount. No matter what I put my bike through, my phone refuses to come off that mount unless I want it to. But you already know all of that. What you might not know is that they make a whole range of goodies goodies for your phone, from sport rings to screen protectors and even Bluetooth speakers with the same high-strength magnets. They designed it for golf carts, but the magnets don't just work out on the links, so you can use it anywhere. Click that link down below and check out everything that Rockform has to offer, and use the code YN25 to get 25% off your order. Next up is the Indian Chief, which got a massive styling update for 2022, and before you get all mad at me for including a next model year motorcycle, don't worry, 2022 bikes will be out on dealership floors later this year. The Chief is basically Indian's answer to the Harley Softail line, and while I do love the look of the Low Rider S more than the Chief, the price is more palatable at $15,299 with ABS. I'll be the first to admit that the old Chief was a butt-ugly bike. But then someone in the design department had the great idea of stripping away all the ugly, and you're left with a mean-looking cruiser that's putting down 108 foot-pounds of torque out of its 1811cc engine. Yes, it's not as much as the Harley, but hey, it's lighter at 645 pounds, so that's something. Also, just looking at the frame and the way the gas tank is mounted up, I can already see tank lifts and chopper builds that are coming. If you want a muscle bike and you want to buy an American motorcycle, I highly recommend waiting until this hits the dealership floors. I'll wager you'll be able to get one in October. But what if you're a real boy and you want to blast down the highway at 90 miles an hour with your American flag do-rag and the sweet sounds of Freebirds serenading you from your dashboard speakers? Well, then you need a bagger, and the best bagger out there right now, bar none, is the Indian Challenger. Another one of Indian's answers to the question, I want a Harley, but... The Challenger was designed to eat the Road Glide's lunch, and that's a hard goal to achieve. The Road Glide has been the go-to bike for commuters and long-distance tourers and just general cruiser fans ever since it came out. So what does Indian have to offer? Well, it's got better tech, more torque, more horsepower, radial-mounted Brembos, electronically adjustable windscreen, and while it probably doesn't matter to the average watcher of this video, it's got a better stereo. Now, I personally think having a stereo on a motorcycle is stupid. But hey, if you want everyone in the neighborhood to listen to Motley Crue with you, then this is the way to go. Now, number 5 is for the bagger boys who want the bike that literally no one else has. You need to be different, and you don't care if your friends think you're a snob. Well, then go get yourself the Moto Guzzi MGX21 Flying Fortress. It's that one Italian bagger with the longitudinally mounted V-twin, the little batting fairing, and carbon fiber out the wazoo. I mean, it's the only bagger that I know of that comes stock with a carbon fiber front wheel. Yeah, Moto Guzzi's nuts, and they don't care what anyone thinks. The only problem is that, like all other Moto Guzzis, it's slow and underpowered relative to its competition. The MGX21 weighs in at 701 pounds and only makes 95 horsepower and 89 foot-pounds of torque out of its 1380cc V-twin engine. With all the carbon fiber on the bike, I would have liked to see that number in the mid-600s, but oh well. It'll cost you about $21,990, which is spicy, sure, but if you want to get a bagger and you don't want to be one of those guys, this is the only bike for you. And now we're getting into some real good bikes, and starting us off at number 4 is the Triumph Bonneville Bobber and the Speedmaster if you don't like the Bobber aesthetic. It's a Bonneville, but stretched out a bit and made even more comfortable, and if that alone isn't enough to get you excited, then allow me to take you to school. It's packing a 1200cc Bonnie engine which makes 77 horsepower and 78 foot-pounds of torque, and the way it makes its power is so predictable and smooth. If you've never ridden a Triumph, go get on one and feel for yourself how good the throttle feel and the fueling really is. The bike also weighs in at 502 pounds dry, so maybe around 550 wet, which is a featherweight compared to some of the other motorcycles on this list, which are all basically made out of depleted uranium, and it's got a classic looking sound compared to the big lawnmower that is the Vulcan S. Also, if you want to get a bike to wrench on and customize, the Bonnie has an aftermarket almost as prolific as the Sportster. Not to mention, it'll only run you $11,950 for a very premium motorcycle. You do have to deal with the hipster image that comes with riding a Bonnie, but hey, just embrace it. Go get yourself a Biltwell Gringo, some beard wax, and a flannel shirt, and then go out and shoot a bunch of photos of you with the high contrast filter for your Instagram. Number 3 was a bit of a tough one. I wanted to include a bike like the Diavel, but it's not a cruiser, it's a naked bike, and I will go to my grave thinking that, but then I remembered that Triumph basically made their own Diavel when they re-released the Rocket 3. If you made it this far into this list, you're either A, a true blue cruiser boy, B, a Vulcan boy who's busy writing an angry dissertation in the comments section who forgot to press pause, or C, you just like to listen to the sound of my voice, which me too. But assuming you're that one true blue cruiser boy, you want a bike with massive engine and a ton of torque. Well, the Rocket 3 has a 2.5-liter engine, which is almost as big as what's in my car, and it puts down 163 foot-pounds of torque. Yep, go trade in your fat boy wide Dynaglide with a Screamin' Eagle 131 Freedom Cannon on there, because nothing can touch this bike off the line. It'll go from 0 to 60 in 2.73 seconds, which just so happens to make it the fastest 0 to 60 bike currently in production. Sure, the Busa will stomp it after 60 miles an hour, but if you want to be that true suburban delinquent racing Mustangs from stoplight to stoplight, the Rocket 3 is your best choice. It'll cost you $22,500 for the base model, but hey, you do get what you pay for. Number 2 is the Honda Rebel 1100. Yeah, you knew this one was going to be high up on the list. It's pretty obvious why, too. It's a cruiser with Honda's 1084cc cross-plane parallel twin from the Africa Twin, crammed into a 492-pound frame that's putting down 86 horsepower and 72 foot-pounds of torque, and it only costs $9,299 without DCT, which is the right way to buy that bike. Why would anyone on God's green earth inflict a Vulcan S upon themselves when they could just go buy a Rebel? Sure, it's no beginner bike, but buy yourself a cheap little bike off Craigslist, learn how to ride, and then trade up for the Rebel. Maybe if enough people purchase Rebels, Kawasaki might bother to update the Vulcan and make it a bike worth actually owning. Or better yet, take all the current Vulcans off the showroom floor and throw them into Mount Doom where they belong. Go buy a Rebel. Just do it. Number 1 is the Arch KRGT1. Keanu, look, I made your bike be number 1 on my list. Can I please test ride it now? And maybe we can talk about that restraining order. You know, maybe not 500 feet, maybe like 250. Nah, obviously I'm kidding. But seriously, this is number 1 on my list because of all cruisers and of all motorcycles even out there on the road today. This is the one that I am most interested to ride. I'd love to own one too, but at around 80 grand, I don't think that's ever gonna happen. Maybe I should go start a GoFundMe or something. Anyway, the KRGT1 has a stonkin' great 2032cc V-twin putting down 122 horsepower and 122 foot-pounds of torque, and it only weighs in at 538 pounds. Not to mention the entire motorcycle is handcrafted for each buyer. It's got carbon fiber wheels, a 6-pot ISR calipers, Olin's brakes, and all the goodies. Me want so bad. Fact, citizens of the Soviet Union began celebrating the defeat of Germany in World War II as soon as it was announced. Less than 24 hours later, the entire country was out of vodka.
So, I hate to break it to you, but this video is actually over. But if you hit this one right over here, you can keep watching your sweet Papa Yam doing some fun stuff. And if for nothing else, do it for Yammie-chan. Don't worry, I'll wait. I'll just wait. It's okay. Take your time.